is a weird side effect from medication use that no one was ever going to warn you about? Story 1. I can't for the life of me. Remember what the medication was, but several years back I got a shot at urgent care for an allergic reaction. The shot ended up causing a dimple in the subcutaneous fat at the injection site, which was my right butt cheek. It looked like a good-sized portion of my collapse to make a weird butt crater. Apparently, this side effect was pretty rare. My doctor excitedly called a few other doctors into the examination room to share in the beauty of the rare side effect together. That was how I ended up on an exam table with several doctors oohing and awing over my bear. Story 2. Stopping SSRIs. I remember trying to figure out what was happening to be in the late 90s or early 00s. Could only find a few people who had the same thing. Brain zaps wasn't a term back then. When I explained it to my doctor, he was stumped at first. Then we got talking about me stopping my SSRI, and we just kinda assumed that's the cause. Now you can find a lot of people talking about it more, but my psychs or pharmacists still don't warn about it. It's awful. Story 3. I lost my sense of taste for 40 days once due to a rare side effect of a drug. It was miserable. When I heard that happen to some COVID patients, I was very sympathetic. Story 4. I take Seroquel at night, and sometimes when it kicks in, I hear voices in a way. It sounds like someone has the radio on in another room. I can hear speaking but can't make out what's being said. My shrink thinks it's super weird, and it's not a known side effect either. Story 5. When I get opiates at the hospital, I start asking everyone who comes in the room to tell me about their favorite band, and then I compliment their taste no matter what they say. I don't really remember doing this, but my sister has seen me do it so many times that it is clearly a thing with me in that med. Story 6. After getting most of his teeth pulled out, my old angry senior cat who had never sat on me, let alone purred, did both. For the next few days, he'd do it randomly once or twice a day. On the 5th day, I read the fine print on his pain meds that out-of-character affection was a listed side effect. After the meds ran out, he went back to scowling at me from afar until he crossed the Rainbow Bridge years later. Story 7. Pharmacist here, my favorite. Well, that's oddly specific reaction. I'm aware of is a burning sensation in your anus with intravenous dexamethasone steroid administration. Story 8. I take Lexapro and it makes me highly heat sensitive. Anything above 72 degrees and I'm miserable. It also makes me take forever to finish in the bedroom, but I'm chalking that one up in the benefits column. Story 9. I was on Ultram for quite some time. Then one day, about 45 minutes after taking a dose, I had complete voluntary muscle paralysis. I was sitting in a chair, my elderly mother sitting across the room from me, and I couldn't move. Heartbeat, breathing, and blinking just fine. Just could not move. My mom often suffered from falls, and I remember sitting there thinking, terrified, that if she fell, had another heart attack or anything, that I'd just sit and watch it happen. It wore off after about 5 hours. Never took it again. Story 10. Ooh, I was drunk as a skunk and took Pepto-Bismol before bed. Woke up with a black tongue, which is apparently a thing that happens. Freaked me the out. Story 11. Totally took Ambien Lunesta without people telling me. I just call up a dude I've been chatting with and invite them over to watch Q movie and get IT on, and then have little memory of it later. I know it's a side effect that's on the bottle, but I didn't read that. Edit, I didn't take them at the same time. Different times, but just had similar experiences on both. Story 12. I took an asthma medication, Singular Montelukast, and I just wanted to kill my ducks for over a year. I felt insane and like I was repressing my true evil self. I told a friend who was also on the same medication, and it clicked for us that we were not told about this side effect by our doctors. So stopped taking it. Now I don't feel like killing my ducks. I have so much more empathy for people who have those thoughts and repress them. How god-awful that was. Story 13. I've never had morphine before until recently. I'm currently on it due to pain, and holy, the feeling of the morphine is not pleasant at all. The feeling of feeling medicated is so. I can literally feel my heart slow down. It's just a very weird feeling. Story 14. Waking up drenched in sweat like you ran a marathon in your sleep. Nobody told me that was a thing. Also, super vivid dreams that feel more real than actual life, like I'd wake up emotionally wrecked over something that never even happened. Meds really be out here messing with reality like it's optional. Story 15. I took trazodone to sleep. I slept very heavily. However, I had vivid, intense nightmares that left me distressed as soon as I woke up. And that only happened when I took the medicine. Story 16. One gabapentin helps with some nerve pain. Two of them ease my anxiety. Three of them increase my drive to the point that I feel like I'm out of control, like raging. Story 17. I was a cartoon artist. I lost the ability to draw when I went on my current medication a few years ago. I'm pretty upset about it, and I think it's definitely weird. Story 18. The shakes after an epidural edit. The nurse told me I was shaking like I was after giving birth because of the epidural. LOL, a pre-warning would have been cool. Story 19. They put my mom on ketamine to fix her leg, and when it hit her, she gasped and then held her breath. Freaked us out. The nurse said she would feel loopy. I told her about it. She said the entire room exploded into Minecraft blocks mixed with a few other games, so she said she was in such awe that she instinctively gasped and then held her breath. Ain't nothing like hearing the nurse go, "Ma'am, breathe, ma'am. Quit holding your breath. Hey, ma'am, breathe. Name, breathe. Open your mouth and breathe." And seeing the two additional nurses in the hallway run into the room to freak you out. I'm told whatever they used on me to knock me out for wisdom teeth removal, they actually knocked me out. Not just the laughing gas, like actually gone. When I woke up, I wasn't aware, but I am meticulous about reading medication instructions and side effects. Well, apparently I read them. Eyes moving, reading. Detailed questions. I read the bill and remarked on the different items. They had to do bone grafts too. Apparently the surgery was 3 hours. I was awake for 2 more before being released. An hour discussing medications and such. I then apparently sat in the car for nearly an hour while my mom got my meds, and then came home and crawled in bed and slept for another 8-9 hours. Woke up in tears because of the pain and found my mom to ask her if I had any meds. "You didn't take them?" I was like, "No, IDK if I even have any." And thus, she told me the whole thing, and how shocked the doctors were that I was so awake and lucid and normal. Surprise. I wasn't actually there. Story 20. I took Effexor for a while. The first night I took it, I had a terrifying dream I can only describe as demonic. A friend's sister also started taking it and had a dream she wouldn't talk about. She also told her doctor she was never taking it again. Story 21. Zoloft makes me sweat through my clothes. First it was just at night, but now it happens after very small amounts of physical effort. I'm talking like putting laptops away at school and sweats beating down my face. Story 22. When I took bupropion Wellbutrin for the first time, I briefly lost the ability to communicate in my non-native tongue. Like, I was having issues finding words in general, but my aunt called me on the phone, and I literally couldn't find the words to communicate with her. It's kind of a sign of disrespect. Story 23. The gas. They gave me before they put me order for some dental surgery. I had had the gas before at another dentist with no issues. But something was different this time. I'm laying there getting all relaxed and thinking something like, "This is so relaxing." Then I think, is this what it feels like to be dying? Oh. I get myself calmed down and relaxed again. I tell myself, this isn't so bad. Then the thought becomes, that's what they want you to think. Oh. That cycle repeated. I don't know, many times before some lucid part of my brain just said, stop it. Story 24. I took 14 of a Xanax prescription, first ever dose, while I was staying at a hotel on a business trip. I experienced severe, intense, very real night terrors. I was terrified and was glad the windows didn't open. Never took another dose. Story 25. I can't remember what medication was, but there was an antidepressant my physician prescribed a while ago, which could cause a rare condition that could kill you if it gets bad enough. Luckily, I stopped taking it immediately once I saw the early symptoms of it, a rash on my chest, and told my physicist about it immediately. He said the rash would go away once I stopped taking it, and not to worry unless I felt other symptoms come on. Rash went away pretty quickly, and I didn't feel any additional symptoms afterwards, so I got off lucky there. Story 26. I took a medication called ivabradine and got a very weird side effect that effectively gave me strobe light vision in the dark. I would get after images of everything I had looked at incredibly strongly to the point I couldn't see where I was going or what I was doing if it was dark. Luckily, these effects did go away, but it took about 4 weeks. Story 27. Hardcore IV antibiotics. I knew you could get fungal infections as a side effect, but no one told me that it could be esophageal. I thought I was having a heart attack at my high school graduation rehearsal and had to be taken to the ER in an ambulance. ER doctor told me it was a muscle twinge and sent me home. Had to go back to the specialist who diagnosed my rare bacterial infection Lemierre syndrome to get a correct fungal infection diagnosis. Thanks, Dr. Alter. Story 28. No one tells you that after chemo mosquitoes and other flying insects can no longer smell you as food. I tell everyone I know who gets cancer this so that in those dark days when you prefer death to any more treatments, they have this little silver lining to think about. Story 29. Benadryl has never made me tired. It makes me extremely hyper and jittery. I haven't taken it since I was in my early 20s because I don't like how I feel on it. Yesterday, after a 75-day migraine, I had a migraine cocktail which included Toradol, Reglan, and Benadryl. I was desperate and thought maybe the Benadryl wouldn't affect me like it used to, since I haven't tried it in 20 years. I laid down to try to nap, but my body felt like I had the creepy crawlies. My migraine is finally gone, hopefully for a long time. Story 30. My body is weird. I unfortunately have at this point a list of weird side effects. Birth control messes me up in a bad way. From the ring-style BC making me throw up daily, to one of them I can't remember which one, made me break out in painful hives from the sun. I've tried several with other various side effects and finally gave up. Wellbutrin caused me to have, to put it politely, leakage. And then there's Lamical, which caused a rare reaction called Stevens-Johnson syndrome that nearly killed me. I'm sure there's more, but at this point I'm extremely careful about what meds I take. Story 31. Cytotec misoprostol was supposed to soften my cervix open me up in order to make for an easier DC when I miscarried at 8 weeks, and my baby wasn't passing, putting me at risk for sepsis. My doctor told me to expect period cramps. Instead, I went into full-blown labor at 13 weeks, uterine hyperstimulation for 4 hours straight, went hypoxic, and ended up in the emergency room. My next doctor told me she had stopped prescribing Cytotec a decade prior because of all the horror stories she had heard. It only happens to a low percentage of people, lucky me, but it was deeply traumatic and very dangerous. I experienced silent labor for my next successful pregnancy, though, so I feel like that was my body's way of saying, you already did this once and didn't even get a baby out of it, so we're giving you a break. Anyway, my experience with Cytotec is likely directly related to my subsequent placenta abruption. The silent labor one, I never experienced labor pains, but she also detached mid-labor and had to be delivered via C-section several days after her due date, because the days of contracting were weakening the placenta. The doctor then highly discouraged me from attempting a VBAC due to the damage, so my next surviving baby was also a C-section. So basically, if you have your heart set on a natural childbirth, I absolutely hope to warn you all away from ever taking misoprostol for any reason. Story 32. Totally blanking on the name, but a while back my doctor put me on a new medication. He told me I wouldn't get a headache, but I'd feel like there was boiling water sloshing around in my head. He was right. Story 33. I took tramadol for pain relief because I can't take oxycodone. Did not expect to feel okay. Not good, not bad, just fine. Apparently it has antidepressant properties. Wild way to find out I have depression. Story 34. Meds can sometimes have an opposite effect. It's called a paradoxical reaction. Benadryl and Lortabs make me speedy, and I just discovered Valium also gives me a boost of energy but makes me extremely angry. These reactions are not what is typical, haha. I do have ADHD, so I wonder if that's a risk factor for this type of reaction. Story 35. I was given gabapentin for nerve pain. I took it for about 2 months until I did some weird stuff. I poured myself a glass of tea from a pitcher, and instead of putting the pitcher back into the fridge, I poured the tea in the garbage can. At work, I was writing a few notes on paper with a pen. Instead of writing sick, I wrote ascus. That scrambled my brain and I stopped using it. Story 36. Took Cymbalta when it was fairly new. Nobody told me a side effect was acute amnesia episodes and that they might not go away just because I stopped taking it. If I get highly stressed, I still experience an episode. Story 37. Amoxicillin makes me suicidal. Like in a very matter-of-fact way, The first time I got prescribed, I noticed 3 days in that I was like all for making a plan, and it confused me because I wasn't depressed at the time. And I told my partner and was like, I think this med is making me suicidal. So he told me to tell my doctor immediately. I called and spoke with a nurse, told her to please get my doctor to prescribe something else. And she didn't believe me at first, but they gave me something different. Then next time I was getting on antibiotics, the doctor told me they were prescribing amoxicillin. And I said, no, that makes me suicidal. She completely shut me down and said that that's not possible. And prescribed it anyway. And sure enough, 3 days in, here comes that feeling again. So I called and had it switched and told them to put it in my chart that I'm allergic to it, please. And they said, suicidal thoughts are not an allergy. Well, I get a new doctor later on. She wants to put me on amoxicillin. I explained to her my story and she was like, that's interesting. I've never heard of that. Well, give it a try, and if it happens again, I'll label you allergic to it. And of course, I call and tell her I need off of it. And she says, I'll get something else prescribed to you immediately. I ended up doing research to see if this was an actual thing, and I found out it is. You are not the only one to deal with this as a symptom. There have been other cases, it's just extremely rare. I put it in your chart that you are allergic to it. This is absolutely an allergy, just a weird one. Story 38. Nobody warned me that going on Zoloft, the one with the sad little blob commercials, had another nickname. The marriage ruiner. I started Zoloft, and my marriage ended within 6 months. Thank God I got out of that, and the antidepressants helped me see my horrible situation. Story 39. When I was on duloxetine, I couldn't handle heat. Any temperature above 75 F, I was absolutely miserable. Entire summers feeling perpetually stuck in heat exhaustion. Days and days with no sleep because it was a little too warm in bed, even with fans on, windows open, cooling blankets. I'm switched back to fluoxetine now, for other reasons, and my heat tolerance has jumped back up a good 10 degrees. I can be in 80 F heat and not feel like I'm dying. I only need to drink 1 Powerade a day if it's above 90 F and I'm staying inside. Turns out SSRI and SNRI both up thermoregulation, most commonly by changing the body's electrolyte balance and causing you to urinate out salts that you should be sweating out. Then, your sweat won't cool you correctly. And if you drink plain water, you end up with electrolyte imbalances plus overheating. It's not a fun time, and only recently have doctors talked about it. Story 40. Clonazepam. Took it for anxiety back in 2020. It worked fine, but then one day, I blacked out. I couldn't remember how I got home from work. I woke up and it was around 8 p.m. It worked fine for a couple of weeks, and then it happened again, this time on a weekend. I did errands like shopping, didn't drive, lived in NYC, woke up and had no memory of the day, threw the rest out, and I will never take that again. Story 41. Akathisia from antipsychotics. Worst feeling ever. Almost killed myself a few times experiencing it. When I got it really bad, I also used to experience oculogeric crisis, involuntary eye movement deviating upwards, MISC. Never heard of akathisia until I kept trying to look up side effects after my 3rd med try and it got worse. Super inner restlessness. Constant. I wish this upon no one. I have been through many med changes, but I think I found I perfect one for me. Only slight whispers of AKA, but none as bad as they were. I'm still in support groups for it, and I try to help anyone I can who experiences this horrible, debilitating side effect. Story 42. Not me, but I had a drama instructor who was in her 80s, who almost died because her pharmacist failed to warn her about ingesting citrus with her hypertension meds. She ate half a grapefruit every day for a week and then collapsed one morning from medication toxicity. It took her more than a month to recover and be able to walk and work again. Story 43. May cause dry mouth can also mean lose a bunch of teeth because gum line infections cause hidden cavities below the gum line, which means in turn that you don't know you have a cavity until one day the tooth just breaks off below the gum line. Story 44. Zyrtec treats itching, but the withdrawal from Zyrtec is intense itching, which can last months. I was unfortunately a victim of that vicious cycle, joined a group of Zyrtec withdrawal sufferers, and helped others try to leave it. I advise no one ever take it for anything, ever. Don't risk it. Generic Claritin works fine, and I have no withdrawal pain from it. Not sure if this fits as weird, but more of a serious warning. Story 45. Phetsema. The anger I was having while on it was crazy. My road rage was horrible. Normally, I can't stand the drivers where I live, but I wanted to ram into them over and over. I was snapping at people constantly. It was absolutely horrible. I am usually a mellow person. Story 46. When I first started taking progesterone, it made me go into a drunk-like state. Drowsy, dizzy, and disoriented. Told my OB, and she told me that it does happen to some women. Story 47. This was a few years ago, so I don't remember the medication or why I was on it. My guess was maybe I had an ear infection or something. Anyway, whatever meds they put me on made my skin really sensitive to sunlight. Like it actually felt like burning to be in the sun too long. I worked as a seasonal for parks at the time. I was literally outside 8 hours a day for work. A warning would have been nice. Pretty sure I quit those meds early. Story 48. Not being able to taste carbonated drinks on Topamax trochanidopyramate. I told several restaurants that their soda machines were out of syrup before I figured it out. Story 49. That the benzodiazepines I got for panic attacks were notoriously hard to stop because of extreme rebound anxiety and insomnia problems. You need to very, very gradually wean yourself off of them when you stop. Like I'm talking, take 2 months and drop it down to the point that you are taking a tiny crumb by the end. It will take you for a total ride. Story 50. I used to drink too much, almost a decade ago at this point. But when I was deep into it, white noise sounded like people talking. The fan, running water, it all sounded like people whispering. And any corner of furniture was physical pain to look at. I had to literally turn away or I felt like I was going to smash one of my eyes into if. Never did, and it took years to fade after I stopped drinking. But the intense fear was so visceral. Story 51. If you're in the lucky small percentage of people with weird metabolisms, Zoloft, usually prescribed for anxiety and to calm you down, will instead speed you up. I had a few friends who took it, and each and every one of them had to take it in the evening because it just smothers them into sleep. First, I took mine, starting dose of 50 milliliters in the evening as recommended. I spent the entire night with every muscle so tightly clenched that the next day found me sweating a lake onto the sheets, and with a few days of sore muscles. Luckily, I did not have an anxiety attack, but to this day, like 7 years later, I take 25 milliliters in the morning. I no longer feel sped up, but I definitely don't need more than 25 milliliters to keep the edge off. Story 52. Risperidone made me, a teen girl at the time, lactate. The doctor immediately took me off it. Unfortunately, the same thing happened to a lot of boys, and there was a big class action settlement over it. Story 53. I was on some type of medication when I was 16. It made me full-on lactate. I had never been with a man before. I was so confused why the milk was literally water guns spewing out of my LOL. Story 54. Ambien. First night the fireplace was talking to me, I guess I didn't go to bed like I should have. Second night I took the med and went to bed. Next thing I know, I was outside talking to my cousin. I stopped taking the medication with my MD approval. Story 55. You'd be surprised at how many commonly prescribed drugs have strong links across multiple studies to dementia. Some of the types of meds are certain antidepressants, drugs for urinary incontinence, sleep aids, etc. Always check and don't assume that your doctor is informed. Mine wasn't. Story 56. I was on Klonopin for almost 13 years. Took me a year to wean off, and that wasn't without complications and torture. I've been off 17 months, and since then I've had Bell's palsy that never recovered, zaps, insomnia, suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts, the worst brain fog I've ever known, paranoia, and more. Those are never meant for more than 4 weeks or so, and I was on a daily heavy dose. I am now scared of any prescription received and trust no doctor. Story 57. I started a new antipsychotic at an extremely low dose and thought nothing of it. Well, at Christmas with my family, my sister tells me that I'm yellow. I head over to the ER because jaundice is pretty serious, and it turns out that the medicine has an almost impossibly small chance of giving you pancreatitis. I just happened to be one of the ones unlucky enough for that to happen. Story 58. Synesthesia. One medication I was on after surgery made me hear colors and taste music. It was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. I had to cover up a painting in my living room because it felt so loud. The colors weren't bright, they were just loud, cacophonic. I tried listening to some music. That was worse. I could hear the notes, but I could taste them too. Story 59. Some SSRIs gave me weird vision problems. The notes suggested blurry vision, but what I got was a fluctuating depth of focus. It felt like I was focusing right in front of things and then right behind them, never right on them. Story 60. The first time I was antidepressants, it killed my drive and prevented me from getting an erection. This did help my general feeling of being depressed and lack of feeling accomplished. Doctor got me on something without this side effects. Story 61. I received oxycodone after a joint replacement. That night, I took one so I could sleep. Instead, I spent the next 5 or so hours with excruciating pain in my thighs. It felt like my legs had been amputated. The next night, thinking there was no way the oxy was at fault, I took another one. The same horrible result. I avoided all painkillers for the rest of my recovery. The residual pain from the healing joint was far less problematic than the medicine. Story 62. That taking insulin causes weight gain. I'm highly resistant and the DRs had me on over 400 WO day. Then gave me Absolute because I gained WT. I had no clue and just slipped into a deep depression because nothing seemed to work. Then 2 years ago after 25, I get a doctor who flat out tells me insulin causes WT gain. 100 let's work on trying to get you off of it. What the ever-loving? Yeah, I'm down 90 lobs and feeling great thanks to him. Story 63. When I was young, I was put on Prozac. This was in 1990. It was still considered a wonder drug. It helped everyone except me. The next 4 years were absolute. The thoughts and attempts were unrelenting. Getting off Prozac was no picnic, but I'm a lot better without it. Story 64. Dry mouth equals cavities. The most miserable experience. That being said, if you are able to, get a genetic panel done. Saves you from trying out different medications. Psychosis-like episodes. Peaked when I was coming off of meds. Story 65. After reading some of these, mine seems tame. But it was funny. One of the many times I had kidney stones, my doctor prescribed oxycodone. I dreamed my sister, who is deceased, and I were shoe shopping in the mall parking lot. There were racks and racks of shoes. Suddenly, someone screams and points to the sky. There is a giant chicken flying, and we knew it was trying to get us. We ran and got on a bus. There were people everywhere screaming. The chicken lifted the top off the bus, and that's when I realized the chicken was made entirely of Charm's grape blow pops. I pulled one of the blow pops out and the chicken fell apart. Everyone was so happy. We went in the mall, which was dark and deserted, and started sliding down banister of a regal-looking staircase. We were all laughing and running up the stairs and sliding back down the banister. I also was on a muscle relaxer once. I usually only took it before bed. My back was really killing me at work, so I took one. It was like I was intoxicated. I fell out of my desk chair. Luckily, it passed in about an hour. Story 66. Not a medication, but I'm in the midst of getting sober, and something I had never heard of is the intense sweet tooth you get. I thought I was losing it, but apparently it's super common. Story 67. Chest pain-damaged veins while on birth control. I was 18 when I first went on the pill orthotricycline low, or however it's spelled. My mom was the first to notice that my veins looked unusually blue. I didn't really think anything of it since they didn't hurt. Then spider veins started to break out. Then I started having chest pain, left arm pain. Sometimes I would wake up and I could see all of the veins in my body prominently. I went to my doctor and told her about this, and she shrugged it off and told me to keep taking the pill because we only worry about deep vein thrombosis. I guess the chest pain was no big deal? Anyway, I left that appointment and never took those pills again. It stopped the chest pain, but I developed a varicose vein in my leg that I've only now started treating. I've asked other doctors about this, and no one has ever heard of birth control having this effect. So now I just stay away from hormonal birth control. Story 68. I can't recall what medication it was, but there was one medication that I took that made it hard to pee. Like I would sit there and just couldn't let it go without effort. It was so annoying. Story 69. My anti-rejection meds cause me to lose hair in odd places. My calves are mostly goes in cycles like farmland LOL. Thankfully, my head hair is immune. My bipolar medication causes looping, so I always have a song stuck in my head. Story 70. I got a 4-day case of hives after eating some live culture yogurt, and am fairly certain it's because I ate the yogurt right after completing a 21-pill round of amoxicillin. The antibiotics knocked out the good bacteria, along with the bad, and my body went what the actual with the yogurt. Story 71. Omeprazole is horrible to get off of. It actually makes your acid reflux worse for 67 of people for up to 12 weeks. My GI wanted to hand it out like candy. This is a pretty serious drug, and you should be aware of side effects and major withdrawal issues before taking it. If you're new to starting an SSRI and you haven't taken a test to see if you have major incompatibilities with this type of medication, good luck. Playing with fire. I got serotonin syndrome from a child-sized dose of Prozac, which has a half-life somewhere around 15 days and took me almost 3 weeks to feel okay even working again. A simple genetic test revealed that I should never take this kind of medication, although GeneSight is woefully incomplete and inconsistent. Always check your drug interactions, both legal and illegal. It's totally okay to call a pharmacist about this if you're not sure. Keep Narcan on hand if anyone in the house is on opiate medication. And poison control is 100 free if you are worried about any interactions, plant exposure, etc. Story 72. Serotonin syndrome from going off of Xanax. Even trying to taper off, I had horrible disassociation and dizzy spells. Felt like electric zaps in my brain. Story 73. When I took an SSRI, the brain zaps were worse than my situational depression. Seems they're common, but no one warned me, and I thought I was dying or something. Story 74. I was on blood pressure meds when I was in my early 20s. When I started dating a girl and things got serious, I discovered the unfortunate side effect that they made me unable to climax during intercourse. We had several stressful events before I ran out of meds over a weekend and I didn't fill them, and suddenly the side effect was gone. 10 months later, my daughter was born. Story 75. My doctor warned me of loss of desire when I started Prozac. What she didn't tell me was that risperidone would give me ghost loads. Also just learned that melatonin is most likely the cause of my nightmares. Story 76. There is an antidepressant that actually lowers your body's natural defense against seizures. Check and double-check all side effects of your medicine. This one is real, and though I was directly affected by it, a family member was. Family member started having seizures, and we backtracked after so many tests. That, my friend, is the weirdest side effect I've ever known. Story 77. My daughter has schizophrenia. She tried one medication that stopped her periods and caused her to lactate. She was 17 at the time. She came into my room terrified she had breast cancer and was crying. Story 78. I take Effexor. It wasn't until I was on a decent dose, 75-37, 5 extended release, and had my psychiatrist literally quit on me, leaving me almost a month without my meds, that I found out about the withdrawal. Effexor is rated one of the worst mental health medications to withdraw from. There is an iconic brain zapping that feels like a comedy hand buzzer is going straight to your skull and brain. There is the nausea and binocular eyes, where your vision zooms in and out at random. There is the inability to eat without pain and the diarrhea. And then, of course, the emotional side effects. I felt so incredibly sad and empty and angry all at once. I felt like killing myself and dumping my boyfriend and punching family members. I ended up crawled up in a ball on my bed the first few days, unable to work or eat or drive or sleep. All I could do was cry. It was horrible. I am now on a maintenance dose of 37, 5 of Effexor, and still working with my current doctor to wean off of it so I never experience that again. When you start medications, or if you are a doctor prescribing medications to mental health patients, please discuss withdrawal. And if you are starting a new medicine, Google the withdrawal and side effects. It is so much easier to understand coming from other people than reading those long medication forms. As someone who reads everyone when I get a new medication. Story 79. Nobody warns you about finasteride for preventing potential hair loss before it happens. Apparently for a very small number of people, but they're not sure exactly how many. It has a neat side effect that it can just up and completely destroy your drive. Flat. Nothing. Prepubescent levels of libido. You can't feel a single bit of interest or desire. Oh, and it may be permanent. And they're not sure what causes it or why. For me, I went from being in the running for highest drive of anyone I know, consistently, ever since puberty, with exactly 0 periods of low or no drive, even during long bouts of depression and attempted suicide, to suddenly having nothing, within months. Keep in mind the hardware still worked, to put it politely. The drive was just gone. There was no feeling at all. After over a year of trying various things, looking into all sorts of potential theories and doctors' research on the matter, and possible theoretical treatments and procuring and trying them on myself fully, outside of any medical direction or approval, I finally found something that worked for me, I do believe. It was a pretty drastic recovery, and while I'm not certain it's 100 better, I know it's ridiculously better than it was. Anyhow, if you value your drive and don't feel like gambling it for the potential risk of hair loss, avoid finasteride. That is all. Story 80. I took carbamazepine aka Tegretol in my teens to prevent seizures. Initially, the dosage they gave me was a more frequent smaller dose with a faster release rate. At one point while taking it, I remember walking down the street and realizing that my head was floating along without a body. Switching to a slow-release dose fixed that. Story 81. I was on Ozempic for a bride stint, the miracle weight loss drug that everybody was raving about. About 3 months I started feeling sick. Like I had the flu sick. After 6 months I looked like death. I was nauseous 247 and looked like the Walking Dead. That's when I stopped taking it. Within a week my color returned to normal, my energy was back, and the nausea was gone. Never again.